Memes and machines, we dive into the creator economy, the good, the bad, the ugly. What are some mistakes brands are making? What are some of the opportunities? We also talk about UGC that is AI generated. Is that AGC? Stop calling it user generated content. Is it good for the industry? Is it bad? And we conclude with some dark topics. Probably not your typical memes and machines episode, but you know what? No waters go uncharted on memes and machines.
Sit back, grab a cold beverage from the fridge and relax because you're now locked in to the sounds of memes and machines.
Fellas, good to see you. How you both doing?
All right, mate.
Chilling. Look at that smile, Ben. That's a guy that's...
Sun is out. The sun is out for the first time in many weeks. Wow, it was out at the weekend.
Yeah, spring is
Actually,
here, chaps.
not too
Spring is
bad.
here.
Finally.
Yeah, talking of spring, Ben joined me on a co-created community walk, and number one, the one we tested in January, was an absolute washout, literally a storm. Number two was glorious sun. So we looked out. Spring is springing.
Nice. I was going to ask you how the walk went, but I didn't realize you got good weather for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, you can't plan for that. Next month we're going to do one in London. And I don't know where you go for a hike in London, but it needs to be within good transport links. And then the other, we're going to do a dual cast in the north again. Because a lot of people are, it's a big ask to come up from London or down south. So I just need to figure that piece out. Which will be fun. But chaps, I want to dive into a topic that we all have very strong opinions on. And it's a bit of an extension from our experience last week at MadFest. So Ben and I discussed creator marketing, and our headline was "Brands Stop Wasting Your Time with Creators." Tiny bit of irony in there, considering what Ben does, but the whole point of it was to give a really honest take around the creator industry. You're 10 plus years into an industry. It should have matured. Some things have, some things haven't. So we tried to give a very honest take, certainly from Ben's perspective. As you know, I don't think brands hear it enough. They don't hear the wisdom. So we'll use that as a jumping off point. Ben, do you want to give some, I suppose, some context to some of the themes we discovered, and probably starting with that kind of macro question, which is what are the headlines? What is the 2025 current state of affairs when it comes to creator marketing?
Probably overall that there's like now creators creating in every sub niche of a sub niche. Like there's really bespoke, unique creators on everything. Where I guess previously 5 years ago, when someone said influencers, people would generally think of like the Instagram influencers, the lifestyle influencers, fitness, beauty, fashion, the really sort of mainstream, like big niches. Whereas sort of we've now progressed in the ecosystem where more people have been obviously creating content in that period of time. And that's led to now having sort of influencers across lots of really like niche bespoke categories, which is great for brands now because it means that they don't actually have to pay big bucks like to reach these really to use influencers that like have these really widespread audiences that aren't hyper targeted. Now you can go like to a macro influencer, which is around 100k to 1 million, or like a micro influencer, which is generally around 10 to 100k. And you can find them in very small pockets of the internet, like with super targeted audiences. That essentially means that you're going to probably get a better return for your money because these people don't cost as much. They have a better target fit audience. And generally a lot of these creators, you'll also find ones that are like me that spend a lot of their time making videos on, products and services that exists within that like ecosystem, and that just then makes it even better for brands, because then you can find creators that like it's just easier for them to make an ad for you that naturally just fits into their content. Where I just find that when lifestyle influencers do ads, they come across as really inauthentic. It's like, you know, they're using this new shampoo, they're using Head and Shoulders shampoo. Like, I'm like, you don't use that. Like, it's so like, you just feel like I've never seen you create a piece of content on shampoo before. Like, so it's like, it's nice for brands because they can actually now go and like find somebody that, you know, creates content on, you know, certain types of fishing bait, and see that they like talk about, you know, lots of, you know, different types of bait, different types of fishing products, gear, like very, very specific. And they know that they can then just like easily create a video for their product or service because they're already really, really bespoke and niche.
Yeah.
And we've never really seen that happen before. Yeah, it's good for creators, good for brands. But then the problem is just finding those influencers takes a bit of time. And also like just using the right ones as well is also, you know, hard to know, like who has the most trust, who has actually good influence, you know, just because from the outside they might have good engagement, big numbers, but actually, you know, how trusted are they? How much do actually people believe what they say? You know, just because they get lots of likes and views, that doesn't necessarily mean people go out and buy based off of their recommendation.
I think just
And
on that,
that's really what the hardest thing is to judge.
yeah, I think on that point, Ben, the trust piece, it goes hand in hand with the niche. Like, if you came to me trying to shill a shampoo, I'd go, Ben, I don't trust you. If I started shilling a shampoo, everyone's going to listen.
Yeah, everyone's
So,
about it.
you know, we all get to niche now. But look, the trust thing's fascinating because I think it's one of those things that is hard to quantify, and it's almost void in people's decision-making process. You know, we
Yeah.
crudely categorize people based on their audience, objective metrics like engagement, average views. And the reality is that's like saying everything is equal. The reality in
Yeah.
the world of influence is it is not. Certain people have mass authority on certain topics and have, you know, real deep influence. Many don't. And that's probably one of the underlying flaws that exists within the industry. We're using like media metrics to determine influence, and it's definitely not the same thing.
One thing actually I didn't say in the talk that I wanted to, but I forgot. And it was similar, like an analogy, like of what's happening in the like in the celebrity influencer space. People who are in the public domain, you're aware of that. You already have this like judgment on whether you trust them or not, like just celebrities, right? Because everybody knows them, you know their history, you know all the bad things they've done, all the good things, and whether they're actually a trustworthy person. And you are able to form that opinion because they're in the public domain, and you'll have a, you know, there's touch points there in their past and what they've done. And if there are certain celebrities that brands wouldn't go near because of their past, they have these people, celebrities have influence, they have fans, but they also sometimes do things that maybe don't shine the best light of them if it's related to drugs or alcoholism, etc. And that puts a brand off using them, right? And this is exactly what's happening in the influencer space, but on a different in a different way. Influencers have this history of behavior that either makes them more trusted or less trusted. And the views on their video that they got yesterday doesn't show that. And if a brand had all the information on this person throughout their journey as a creator, this would, I think, would shift whether or not they decided to work with them or not. And there's just no way of knowing that. And it goes back to, we talked about the negative impressions and the negative association to a brand. And, you know, it's not the same as, you know, an influencer previously doing drugs or alcohol, but it might be something that's like apples to oranges, where they actually are very well known for using clickbait hooks and actually, you know, over-promising and under-delivering a lot in their content. And generally that means that people just don't believe them as much as to someone that doesn't do that, but gets less views because they're not always like creating these super flashy intros that, you know, short form content has brought to the ecosystem. And I think that's a super interesting thing that brands should consider, is that, like, how do you know which influencer has the best track record for just trust based on the content they create and the way that they operate? And I just, thought that parallel of a celebrity in their history is a nice way of thinking of that.
As you're describing that, it really brings home the layers to influencer marketing. And it's like, they always say the utopia of marketing is scaling the unscalable. And kind of what you're describing, we've tried to commoditize creator influencer marketing where we can do lots of it. But it is quite hard to commoditize, you know, when you're having representatives create content, recommend you. There's an authenticity when it's done correctly. And there's the antithesis of that when it's not. And it's this weird transaction. I don't think even sort of 10 plus years into the industry forming, we've kind of come to grips with that fully. Chris, a question for you. You're in the, let's say, the faceless influence business. Do you think there's a higher or lower burden of trust when, like, you know, if Ben recommends something and he's talking absolute nonsense, there's a consequence to Ben. In the faceless influencer world, where you're just an entity, you maybe don't have that same challenge. What are, like, some of the pros and cons of being in the kind of curated or the space you're in?
That's a great question, actually. I think the same principles still do apply, honestly. You know, for example, if we promoted like a dodgy cryptocurrency in the same way that Ben might have, or another influencer might have promoted a scam, you're going to have that same blacklist to your, you know, sort of authority. And also, you know, as we discussed in the last episode, if it's caught that you are buying likes, buying followers, faking engagement, trying to, you know, play the numbers, I think that a person looks just as bad as a theme page doing that, you know. But the things I think about, like when it comes to faceless, are interesting because you can be less point of view personality and more covering the topic. And what I mean by that is, you know, like the Drum magazine, you don't think of them as being one or two people. You think of them as representing all of marketing and advertising. That's their theme. So they really carved out a niche, and lots of the places become media companies at the end of it, which don't represent a person, but more so a topic or a subtopic. Kind
Or
of like
like
a
a
Reddit
culture,
thing.
or like
Yeah.
it's like a shared view on the world.
I like to compare it to Reddit because Reddit, you don't know the admin of a Reddit group. You know the Reddit group's name. That's the thing that you search for in Reddit, isn't it? You search for landscape photography and you don't search for Adam Kazula, the guy that runs landscape photography, you know, because it's much easier as an SEO play to have a theme page than it is to be a person. You know, what does Chris or Ollie or Ben do or talk about? By our names alone, you'd have no idea. But by the name of a topic page, you know exactly the things that they cover. You know, famous campaigns, the drum, artificial inspiration. These are the sorts of words that you maybe are searching for, as opposed to X influencer. And the thing you identified earlier, Ben, is the exact issue with me, with influencers in general, is brands don't know how to find the best ones. There's no way of understanding how or where to find them. There's lots of people have tried to build databases. You know, lots of companies and agencies have tried to become that middle ground, and we've been approached by lots of them. Social Chain, in fact, was doing this, I believe, for a little while. But also, you know, some of the other big ones in England that have represented all sorts of people when they've approached us, like Meta and Google and brands like this. And often they are influencer marketing, like database agencies. But that's the only way that brands can really find them, is you have to buy someone's service to find the best ones, because there's no way that they can just search Instagram to find you know, niche influencers that have genuine engagement and all of those metrics that you need to test in order to make sure it's real.
I'll go a step further. I've been involved for nearly a decade in creator influencer marketing in some capacity. And a lot of people in the industry will profess that or you would think by now, there's a high degree of science in terms of the software applications used to identify. The reality is that's usually a baseline sort of sense check just to qualify people via crude, category, audience, engagement rates, etc. What actually happens in the industry is it's just based on experience. It's like, I like this person. They crudely fit the vision. I know very little about them. I may have worked with them once before, so I have a preconception of their rate. So I know if they fall within budget. And I look at what they're doing and I assume that there may be a good fit. I don't have context. It's still a very relationship, people driven industry. And what you end up with as a consequence of that, like really reliable creators that deliver stuff on time, that like end up getting disproportionate amounts of work, the ones that treat it like you would any business service. They're professional, they're easy to deal with, they sometimes over deliver, they let you know when things are active. Just basic administration means you get a disproportionate amount of the attention. So you end up with this concentration of the same people getting 90% share of all the work as a consequence of basically creator agencies picking them. So you don't end up showing the full breadth. And we are burdened with choice. You described it at the start. You're kind of lay of the land, and you describe it as like a fragmentation or a niching down, like to truly a subtopic, which I think is great for brands. However, I still think there's challenges with that.
So do I. I think any organic has challenges. I'll actually tell you the feedback that I get from most people, which is they really prefer newsletters because of the standardization of newsletters across all newsletter platforms. You expect this amount of sends, this amount of subscribers, this amount of open rate, this amount of click-through rate.
It's easy to quantify the value, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they all know, okay, 100,000 should be about $2,000. 200,000 to 1 million should be about 5 to 50 grand. But there's even standardized prices. These are the things, if you're a TikTok influencer with 1 million followers and this brand doesn't yet have a TikTok presence, what sort of metrics are they supposed to gain? Because those Instagram million followers might be completely different, because of the way that TikTok works. So again, there's no standardization to measure 1 million followers from Instagram to TikTok to LinkedIn to all these different social platforms that they can find influencers on.
Creators do two things. They either score own goals, meaning certain creators undercharge for their value, and that sets the baseline expectation for a brand, or in many respects, there's lunacy, where someone once got one brand to pay an obscene fee that they didn't deserve, that didn't equate to that value, and now their expectation is I should get this number every time. So it's a very strange dynamic.
Right.
So if Ben, give us your perspective then as someone that is approached all the time with brands. How are you viewing that pricing conversation?
Pricing's difficult. I have got to a point where ultimately I have different methods for pricing depending on who's approaching me. If it's a brand that I don't really care about, then I might price more aggressively, because at the end of the day, if they're willing to pay my price and
when you say aggressive, you mean higher? If you're not
higher. Okay. Sorry, I mean higher. I understand that with all influencer marketing, they're not able to track everything, and so I'm less bothered if I charge X amount and there's obviously a lot of unknown in that, and they're just unsure whether it was valuable for them or not, because ultimately I don't care too much. Lots of brands don't care about me, and I also don't care about them. But if they look at me and go, well, you're a great fit, oh yeah, and I'm like, we're not that great a fit, but we'll pay you 10 grand. I go, cool, no worries. If I think the product is still all right, if I think the product is good,
so we can buy you 10 grand your price. You'll say anything for 10 grand.
It depends what it is. No. It still has to meet a standard of the tool being good, and whether it performs on my TikTok is another question. I know that certain content, if it's not that aligned with my own content, but does actually fit my target audience, I just don't really ever post about it because maybe I've tried it once and it didn't work, and I've tried it again, it doesn't work. Then it's up to me of going, well, someone offers me a lot of money. I know it's not going to perform. Do I take that or not? Honestly, most influencers will. I think I'm probably one that actually doesn't say yes to most of those deals, but everyone has a price. And at the end of the day, if they then spend that money on me because they're happy to, and they don't get the results that they wanted, like, sorry, like I don't care if they don't come back again because I've already identified them as not someone that I want to build a long-term partnership with. And you might say, well, that's bad of you, Ben. Should I tell them that they're not going to get that many views? Like, if I just think that, like, should I be honest there and lose the business? Like,
So
I
it
I think you
depends.
said,
It depends
sorry.
what it honestly depends on the goal. So this is the bit that everyone has to come to terms with. If you're creating a video, there's a creative process and there's a fee and there's a time expense.
yeah.
If I'm buying you to reach people as a media
Right.
buyer, you're a very expensive way to do that isn't guaranteed. So
Yeah, it's not guaranteed.
it always depends, but if I'm looking for an influential face to validate and create and showcase my product in a really interesting way, that to me is really valuable. And it's actually not your problem if the brand isn't leveraging that asset in the most meaningful way.
I agree. Like, sorry, Chris, I'll just chime in before you go. Like, if that's what, if a brand has got budget to sort of spend that money on me, then I will always be like, you should at least pay for some or ad usage or organic usage and leverage the asset that I've made, because that's what you're paying for. Aside from views, you're paying for a video that is done in the style that I make, which has value. You're paying for my face on that video, which has value. And that will bring trust and conversion. If my video doesn't perform very well and that's all you've paid for, then I'm sorry, then you as a brand should have identified that if you're paying me to do this video, you may as well add on a few extra thousand or try and negotiate with me to get some extra usage. And I'll usually give that usage if they ask for it and they're paying a higher price above than what I would usually charge, because I'll just go and have it, because I want them to then go and leverage my asset and actually get their money's worth. But if they're putting all their eggs in the basket of organic ads, then that's a fucking stupid strategy in my opinion, because everybody knows that organic ads do not perform very well. I would say 80% of the time for every creator. You won't find creators that make ads that bang all the time. They are very, very extremely rare.
Yeah,
And so I think brands come into it not realize, I don't know, they're naive. Some brands are quite naive in that I think they haven't done a huge amount of influence marketing, and they just think they got big budgets and they're just wasting their money.
I think I think that's symbolic of 90% of advertising. 90% of there's an old adage that I think it's Ogilvy, where it's common wisdom: 50% of my budget works, 50% doesn't. I just don't know which half. I actually think it's more like 80% of marketing is absolutely useless, void of impact and ineffective and overpriced. But the 20%, the wonderful thing about advertising creative marketing is there is no limits on the return. One single ad or one single partnership or one single collaboration can literally change the trajectory of an organization and a company. That makes it a wonderful pursuit. And it's why there's an entire giant multi-billion-dollar industry anchored to marketing for that very, very reason. Chris, I want to kind of segue just off like pricing, and I want to throw, because you mentioned it in the green room and I think it's a fascinating topic and it's actually a real bugbear of mine. AI UGC is not UGC. User generated content. It's artificially generated content. Stop calling it UGC. It's a absolutely ridiculous term. Like, what are you seeing? Because it certainly feels like it from my perspective, I'm seeing more and more avatar ads that I just think are trash, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the avatar ads either. That's not my type of like UGC. AGC is a fun word for it though. Artificial general creativity. But I would still argue that it's the humans that have to prompt it, even though the AI is executing the image and the idea, just like anything else, it takes input, and if it's bad input, it's bad output. So, bad AGC would be human error, therefore it is human, required to be useful in the flow. But something I wrote about in our recent newsletter was it was just really interesting. I was looking at the best AI brand examples to date, and many of them had used this like interface of like brand fan connection where they would give like their products to their fans and let them redesign them. So Ducati let like their fans like redesign their Ducati in any style that they wanted, and Nutella let the people make their own labels. Coca-Cola let people make their own Christmas cards, and this is an ongoing theme for like the top 10 brand AI use cases today. And this is not my opinion. This is Ad Age and all of the others that have curated the 10 best AI campaigns. So it's interesting. One thing I would say about it, though, is it's taking agencies to build this bridge between brands and fans. Brands don't have the in-house ability to make AI apps that users can make stuff with. So my friend was actually behind the Puma Manchester City kit, which was probably one of the coolest ones I've seen to date, honestly, because it has real-world consequences. Essentially, if you won that competition, then you will have the official Man City kit that you designed with AI. So that was kind of the idea of the fan base thing. Was my friend from Modern English called Chris as well. He built this app that Puma and Man City basically co-hosted, and all the fans could then generate kits. And it had like a Tinder style voting inside of it, and you could swipe left or right on other people's generations, and then got down
Was
to
that
final 10.
was that UGC generated? Because my friend got in touch with me, who he was in the final
Yeah.
10, and he was
Oh,
like
really?
on
He was in
and
the
he
top 10. That's awesome.
yeah, he asked me to vote on it. Like,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want to
So
throw him under the bus.
that was it, basically. It was really interesting how they developed it because it was using stable diffusion under the hood. And essentially, you could prompt a pattern, and the pattern would overlay onto the Man City shirt. And then after you submitted 3, you got 3 entries. You could generate as many as you wanted. It was unlimited. So you could send them in WhatsApp and stuff like that. That was good marketing.
See, that's a
But
cool use. That's like a cool
it's a
use of
really cool
tech
use case.
because it's anchored to fandom, number
Yep,
one, and 2, you're co-authoring, and that's like
exactly.
one of the ideas of personalization and scaling things very easily is like
Yep.
that's actually an interest. It's one of the only ones I've actually heard recently that I think is probably quite cool.
This idea of co-authoring, you've just nailed it. That is the biggest thing that AI can enable en masse. Is fans to genuinely have an interaction with their favorite brands and also be a co-author of something that they produce,
Mm.
which is really exciting. I don't know where the agency opportunity in the middle is if you're not a development company, though, because that's the thing is building these AI interfaces is very complex. You have to be APIs, know a lot about APIs. You need to be a web builder. You need to make it lightweight. You're going to have to deal with a lot of restrictions from the brand side about what can and can't be generated. It's going to be a really tough one, but it is I think they got over $1 million for that. It was a serious project.
Oh, wow.
I think I wouldn't be surprised, and I hope it happens. And I think I mentioned this already the other day, is that I would love to see the ASA and so the Advertising Standards Association, the American one, to come out and ban UGC AI ads, because I know like how like
Ads is an
stringent,
interesting one, isn't it?
like
Because
if
I
you're
don't agree with
using
them either.
if you're using an AI avatar to sell a product, that's false advertising, because you're saying that they're making it out like they use the product.
Okay,
And
Ben,
I know
how
that,
far do you take that though? Because here's the
yeah,
question. If you've watched a recent Rogan thing back on YouTube now, because the Spotify deal means that he can post on YouTube natively again. He's
yeah,
running right now like segments inside his podcast, which are clearly AI audio, just his voice with a brand that he's agreed the script to. be trained in audio of his voice so that he doesn't need to record every ad. And then the brand is giving him a script saying, we're going to generate this through Rogan GPT or whatever,
I think
and then
that's
place it in. Is that too far? Or,
I think
because
that's
that's what
fine
I
because
thought as well.
that's not false advertising,
Right.
because that's him doing the advertisement for his podcast. So I get what you're saying. It's a tricky subject, but like if I'm an AI UGC and I'm advertising this Logitech mouse, I don't own the mouse, and I'm actually now making claims that, like, I love the mouse in the advert that a brand Logitech might have created, and I just think that it's a grey area there that I think the advertising standards should come out and just ban AI ads, because I don't agree with it.
So I think you're right in the sense it could be contentious. I think it can be governed quite easily, though. It can be, if it's AI generated, it needs declaration. Like, it just should be watermarked, very visible at the front of the ad. By definition, it falls into the same category as influencer marketing, which you could
Yeah.
argue, even if a person's saying it, it doesn't mean it's not untrue what is being said, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
holding people to higher standards, which they probably don't meet. The reality is whether I get a computer program to say, this is great, this is amazing, or whether I say it myself, there is no real distinction. But what is governed around, it will break ASA rulings if you say something inaccurate, if you don't declare. So, like, you're right in saying, like, the same standards need to be upheld. But then who's penalized? Is it the platform? Is it the person? Is it the individual? It's almost like a multi-stakeholder response is required to address, because sure, when you're selling products, the stakes aren't that high. It's like, oh, someone buys something they don't like. Is that really the end of the world? Probably not. However, if you're convincing someone to go, gamble or do something super meaningful or vote in a certain direction, that suddenly is a really fugazi territory. And the problem with AI is not like people, is it's very scalable. So this is where it becomes a real problem. I can
You
have
just
the
hit
same
on the point
person.
I was going to raise too.
That's the challenge, the scalability of it, of personalization.
Is because advertising's the tip of the iceberg. If you really think about it, like, so few people will actually put paid money behind AI content. Actually, the scalability of AI is organic, and also everywhere else. Like, think about e-commerce brands. Like, there's big e-commerce brands right now using AI virtual try-on models. That
Mm.
means when you go to their homepage, these are not real human beings in their clothing.
Mm.
These are AI models, and they're not declaring that. And there's no standardization for organic or any sort of you need to declare this as a human. So I think the ASA and stuff is good and should be enforced. I totally agree with you, but it's the tip of the iceberg. AI is actually going to affect the entire rest of the iceberg that you don't see under the advertising standards banner. And that's the only place where standardization matters. Anyone could put anything in social media organic as long as it's not an ad and say whatever they want.
Someone said when AI was challenged, saying, well, this isn't a new phenomena, in the sense that fake news and nonsense on the internet has existed unfiltered and unchecked for as long as the internet's existed. But the scalability issue is the real problem. I
Yep.
think now we're able to do something at a very unnatural level that has grave consequences. So if you imagine, let's fast track a year, I could technically, it reminded me a bit, I saw a video of, I think it was live streaming from it was kind of Chinese live streaming where they have a wall of phones, and each phone is live streaming from multiple places. And what they're doing is using 50 different TikTok accounts to do live shopping. They're doing TikTok shop, and there's just a wall of just so many TikTok accounts.
I've seen that
So
video.
you can imagine extrapolate that from a person. That's someone exploiting the technology, having multiple accounts and selling things for commerce. That's not really bad. It's just a smart way of promoting, I suppose, if you sell things through TikTok. The problem is when you're influencing politics, culture, how people think, society. That's where it gets really fucking dangerous, right?
I agree, but I also would say that is fraudulent, mate. You know, if you've got 49 other phones pretending to bid and buy on things and you're
Not bid,
influencing
not bid.
other people.
Just record.
I
Like
know, okay,
podcast.
but like, you know, just take it one step further then. Why not have all 49 of those phones that are looking like they're on the auction site actually bidding and, you know,
Driving
bots
up
that
the
make
price.
people go up prices? That should be fraudulent in my mind because it doesn't
I think
matter
it
if that's a
probably is.
standards
I
of.
imagine it's a policy
But
breach, but
how
like,
would you
how do you
catch
govern?
them at scale? You know, these are the things is there's thousands of accounts maybe doing something like that at a scale whereby it's not hitting advertising standards or any easy law where you can say, okay, that's illegal. And it wouldn't take a lot of like court stuff to get that out. And this is the problem is when there's a lack of friction, always scammers will get involved. Advertising standards is so strict that they
The
know not to push the
the
button on
the
advertising,
only
but
the
the
only way
rest
you
is fair game.
the only way you can do it is no anonymity. You basically have to upload your passport, KYC. Every single user has to be linked to a real identity. That's the only way you can govern it.
That's happened already. That's starting now, yeah.
It's kind of like there is no other alternative. Like, what other alternative? Foundationally, you have to say you have to verify your identity. It doesn't mean you have to broadcast your identity, but the platforms need to know that you are a person, because in theory now, too much fraud could be committed. That's
A
the
lot of
only
them,
solution.
a lot like, yeah, I know Chris said it's happening now, but if like the thing is, if you try and create an account on TikTok or Instagram, it's actually a lot harder now. I tried it a couple of months ago. I wanted to create a new account to just warm to like certain types of content, and Instagram, I just couldn't. It wouldn't. It banned my account instantly, and I had to figure out this workaround to go via desktop to get it unbanned. And then you can't do anything
You can't do it
for
on
a week.
mobile. You can't sign up a new account on
Yeah,
mobile.
you can't sign up on mobile. Yeah, you can't. I had to go on desk, but it doesn't tell you that. They don't tell you that. Oh, by the way, guys, you
They
can't
just
sign up
ban
on
you.
mobile.
They let you set it
Uh,
up, and then it's banned, and then
Yeah, then
you're
it
locked
also
out.
happens to you as well.
Yeah, you're locked
Same thing
out.
with TikTok, but TikTok they shadow ban you can't like or save. You can't do anything. You have to like basically show you're not a bot, and so it's not the same as like verifying, but it's kind of they are taking measures in place to stop people just creating bot accounts originally. And then I wonder if they will then take that step further and basically say, look, like, we're going to give you access to the platform, but you're not going to be able to like post or do X, Y, and Z until you verified.
You know what's going to get really worrying? I was watching videos of people using OpenAI's operator, and there was some very inventive kind of go scan marketplace and like buy shit on my behalf. I want to go buy pianos under £200 within this radius, and they would set it on a mission of like negotiating with loads of people and like getting. And I thought, oh, that's quite inventive.
Nice.
But then you go, well, step out and go. There's some group in Nigeria that's just going to set operator and just be like scamming people left, right, and center. They're going to really wild out. They don't even need a person now. They just need a $200 a month application, and you go, God, it's going to get wild. Like
Yeah,
AI
you
is
can build
conning other AIs. Ugh.
going to be able to build some really super smart scammy bots like that are like probably real human, like, and I said, like, the thing is it's like, instead of it being a human scamming another human, it's a bot, like a really sophisticated, like human like bot scamming another human, and done at scale, like at like just mass scale, which means that like if you play it as a percentages game, it's just going to mean the amount of people that get scams just increase, even if the percentage stays the same, because now these scammers are going to be able to like have a million different human like chat like bots across all marketplaces and all sorts of like buying and selling platforms, or just where there's money to be made.
What's
It's a
happening on the
massive
dark
issue,
web,
isn't it?
Chris? You're Mr. Dark
I'm
Web.
not on the dark web, mate.
What's
But I'll
happening
tell you,
down there?
I'll tell you, this issue is much bigger than we all started to realize, because this human verification process in social media is got like a really double-edged sword to it. I was involved in an agency that got their data leaked when the Meta leak happened. And imagine that Meta, you have to send your passport to. They could go and scam everything about you. Like, do you trust these big tech companies not to get hacked? They're the number one places on earth to try and get the data out of, because people know how valuable it is. So North Korea and everyone else is directly targeting Meta. So do you want them to have your passport?
I
No.
trust them. I trust them more than me.
I'll tell
Like,
you
I
something
lose my
else.
passport all the time, bro.
My friend who was a new friend who I met in San Fran at the Adobe AI conference, good guy, actually from Sweden. So he flew a long way to get there as well. He wasn't a USA local. His X account got pwned 2 days ago. And this was by a cyber criminal who basically sent him a phishing link that he accidentally clicked on. He got his passport details, and now his passport is being, flooded around the internet. He's really genuinely worried. But he had a 48-hour period where he was stressing so badly that he was like constantly posting to every social media platform, begging everyone in every WhatsApp group, does anyone know any modders like X? They're posting like scams from to my giant community, and it happened instantly. And it was terrifying because they disabled his two-factor authentication and everything. They re-changed it, and this all happened within seconds. And actually getting in touch with the people at these big social media platforms
Impossible.
it's a need to know basis. You need to know someone who needs to know someone who's got a really big favor, and then you might get your account stopped within 48 hours. But then otherwise, you've got no hope. It's only because he had a big community and they were doing fake scams and posting things. And this is terrifying how, like, I don't want to verify my human in any of these socials by sending my personal documents in, that could happen to me. I really don't. It's going to be a massive issue for these platforms, and I don't think most people will do it.
Well,
I
do you
think
just charge?
Instagram might lose millions of users if they try to do that.
Do you create
Hundreds
a
of
bit?
millions, maybe.
Do you create a bit of friction, and the only other alternative is to like have people pay? So you go, I have to
I
pay
genuinely
£1.
think it needs to be smarter. I think they need algorithms to detect, but it's just going to get harder and harder with AI becoming more and more human, honestly. But I think that they need to detect this in the same way you guys just said about, new accounts being verified and it being very difficult. They need to just scan for content inside their own platform and identify bots and then ban them. But they
Well,
cannot make every single person prove
the,
that they're a human.
but
There's no way that that's a reality.
I think they have to. It's only the same of so let me play it this way, devil's advocate. You give your driver's license to government departments all the time. Do you think that they are more competent in their data policy than the world's most advanced technology companies? They're not under the same scrutiny, but there are protocols in place that can safeguard people. Some of them are like, if you think of how encrypted banking is, they KYC if you want any bank account. So I think there's definitely ways that this can be done that isn't a risk factor. Like, you may never be able to like re-look at your identity, but as part of that onboarding, it has to be necessary. Like, I just don't see another way. Every other path to solve or attempt to solve the problem feels like you're creating more problems. Is
But
it really that?
just think about it, abstract yourself. Like, do you want your passport to be known only to you in your house, or do you want someone else in the world to have a store of it?
Loads
What
of
would you
people have
prefer?
stores of it right now. I prefer but it's just unrealistic. The world is digital now.
I agree, but that's social security, that's banking, these are the insurance, these are the things that need to have it. But these places aren't nearly as valuable to hack as Facebook, and they're not nearly as liable. Like, think about it. Like, LinkedIn's been leaked, MySpace got leaked, Meta got leaked. All of these social media platforms have had massive data. Now, I'm not saying that the NHS didn't get hacked. Yes, it did. But the NHS records are like your medical records. Like, these are the places that need that detail on you. I don't think that Meta needs to know my passport in order
That's
for me to use Meta. I don't think it's valuable enough.
What should they use then?
They should use, like, I don't know, like, but do they need one? That's the question I
I
keep
know.
asking
Yes, I know
myself.
what
Like,
I know where you're saying this, because on the dark web, they're gonna hate you. If you came out and advocated for lack of anonymity, they're gonna
no,
kick you out of those deep, dark underground. That Silk Road, you're not going to be welcome.
I genuinely think that places that don't require you to enter your details will thrive in the way when everyone else asks you to prove you're
To be
human.
fair, you're right. If there is a world where just people migrate somewhere else, like the internet,
Exactly.
the free market does its thing at that
It's
point.
also really important for information because if imagine you're in China, and this may be cut from the episode, but let's CJ. Imagine you're in China right now and you don't agree with the Communist Party and you want to put something important on social media. If it's tied to your name and your social security, you're not going to do it, are you? You're not going to do it.
It
If you're
creates
in
a sense
Russia,
of
the same is
order.
true. If you've
Yeah.
got an anti-Putin status, you're not going to do it, are you? 20 years in a jail.
They're already not allowed to do it anyway. In those, they're the most extreme
Exactly,
example.
but like that's the thing that we're doing by putting our
Extrapolate.
passport. Exactly, it's
Mm.
almost like going down a communist route where we don't actually believe that you're a human, therefore prove it.
But
Innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent type attitude.
isn't it a trade-off? So principally, I agree with you, but the idea is if fraud and manipulation and security risk was so high, at some point you have to go, if there was a simple solution, albeit not a perfect one, but it's scalable and it's something that could be done today, maybe it should be considered. I don't have a look, I'm not saying it has to be done, but I just conceivably don't envisage another way how you solve that problem.
I've got a plan B.
Like a digital number, digital
Yeah, like an
security.
encrypted
Exactly
version.
what I was going to
Just-
say, Ben. There
just
needs
a-
to be some verification which doesn't require your personal identity.
Web3, the idea of your digital
Exactly.
identity is
A
like an
blockchain
encrypted
thing could
code.
work, yeah, because everything's then accountable. Actually, blockchain's brilliant if you think about it. Because say you were an AI and you faked being a human, then everything's stored. You can go back and trace all of the history of everything that they did. So blockchain might be the way. I don't know because I'm not an expert in any of that stuff, but there has to be some form of verification human process that doesn't require this sensitive passport to be sent to a company that's known for leaking information. There's no way.
Can I go on a side point? And it's where we started. I kind of I want to bring it back to creators a second. Have either of you noticed, and I hope this is just not my algorithm, that you get tons of AI generated Instagram models? They're not real models. I'm getting hit.
100%, bro.
They're like fake. There's
They're
so many of
all
them.
some smarmy 17-year-old guy behind making them as well.
I
Because
saw that one that was like, I saw
It's
that post where it was
gross.
like, oh, the headline was, our AI influencer has been approached by even a professional footballer or something in the DMs. She's got 4 million followers on Instagram. It's just this AI generated Spanish Brazilian looking model. And
If
and
you
obviously
gave me that brief,
people don't even
Ben,
realize.
that's exactly the answer. What is the most Googled sort of race in the world where I could create a female model and it would go bonkers on Instagram? Oh, Brazilian bums
And
and boobs.
you know-
That's
Yeah,
your
yeah,
number
though?
one answer right there.
I think it literally just embodies how dumb men are. What's the one thing where you take about, you just go, oh, men.
Mate, I
dummy."
mean, honestly, I've never understood OnlyFans. I've never understood it. Just as a really raw, disgusting point here, there are
Wow.
millions of free porn sites in the world, and yet some gross married men decide to go and perv on
Ben's
teenage
what it is?
girls.
Ben's taking notes. Ben's sat up. He's
No, it's
smiling.
because
Don't
men
get
think
it.
with their dick. That's why they think with their dick.
Well, go
So
to a
they
free
just-
porn site and get all of it that you want. Why go to OnlyFans?
They're not
I
thinking- they're
don't
not thinking-
understand it.
Because they're thinking with their dick. That's why.
I've never understood it though. And the massive trend is to create an AI avatar on Instagram, which is your top of the funnel, point them towards an OnlyFans, which is all AI generated porn. That's
Yeah.
exactly what everyone's doing because so much of the money to be made
That's
is
what
in that
everyone's
area. No, seriously. I mean that it's a disgusting amount of AI. I'm going to put my real stamp on this. I read in an article 87% of women generated in AI is semi-nudity porn. 87%. That's actually disgusting. It makes me sad that we're given the most creative tool of all time, and there's so
And that's
many
how it's
people
being used.
just doing nude women. It's actually pathetic if you think about it.
But it just goes back to the most innate human desires, the kind of hidden things. It's like porn sites are the most sought after on the internet.
It's a quick way to make no face money, because it's guys running these accounts. It's guys running these female model AI accounts.
You know what I reckon
taking
it
money
is?
away from real women. That's women should stand up and say no more to AI girls, but none of them are doing it. None of them are actually thinking about that.
I actually don't think it's. I reckon it's like puppeteers and scumbags like Tate in the background, like telling young guys to, hey, go set up this business. There's like communities that exist that are just basically telling people to rip off, because it's ripping off dudes, by the way. Like, the only people who lose out in this is like the porn addicted dudes in their bedroom that can't get a job and just go into deep depression. It's like, it's just bad for men. It's literally just bad for men.
It's terrible, and it's the Andrew Tates of these world actually spreading that. This is a side hustle. You can make real money. That's what people are saying. It's genuinely true as well. Like, there are loads of desperate men, subscribing to AI girlfriends, not even realizing it right now. It's genuinely crazy.
God, this went down a dark rabbit hole, didn't it?
It did. You took it, mate. I didn't want to. I really didn't want to get into this side of things, but it's just what's happening.
Throw Chris down the dark web and he's off. Right, gents, I need to bounce, so I'm going to leave it on that dark note. In other news, the creator economy is thriving. Ba-boom.